So we're going to start the pocket by making the facing, and to start we are going to fold back the top edge of the pocket 1/4 of an inch, folding towards the wrong side and pressing that folded edge down. We're then going to take that folded edge and press it back towards the right side, folding back 1/2 inch, using the circles on the pocket marking to as a guideline to fold back on towards the right side of the pocket. Now we're going to stitch down along our side of our pocket at our seam allowance, catching that folded edge of our facing, and we're going to just stitch all the way down the side of the pocket, keeping it at our seam allowance, which is 1/2 inch. Once we have that stitched down, we're just going to trim out the seam allowance within the facing so it's not so bulky. I'm going to do it to both sides there, just trim out that excess. We're then going to fold that facing out. You might want to use a point turn to get nice sharp corners for your pocket facing. We're then going to close that edge of our pocket facing, stitching along the folded edge of it, closing it all together. To make our pleats, we're going to fold down the side edge of the pocket to meet up with the bottom side of our pocket, making sure all those points meet up together, and then just kind of pin that in place so you have a nice placement. You may want to mark on your along your seam allowance, that way it's easier to sew when you get to the sewing portion of sewing your pleats down. So now we're going to sew following our seam allowance, making sure we always pivot at every corner. Again, you might want to pre-mark on your fabric where you would need to pivot. That way it's a little bit easier to match them up. You want to make sure you're pretty much exact as you pivot around each corner, making sure all of your seam allowance meet up. Once you've sewn down both sides, you then need to trim and clip into your corners. Trim down your seam allowance first about 1/8 of an inch, then clip into every corner that you have and trim off any points that you may have, so it's nice and easy to turn your pocket out. You have nice crisp points and edges. Now I'm beginning to turn my pocket out, getting those points out. Again, you may want to use a point turner to make sure you have nice pointed edges, which makes for a nice clean looking pocket once you're all done. Now we're going to start pressing out the edges of our pocket layers. We're going to have two main pleats. First is the outer layer. So you want to use the edges of your bottom corner from your pocket to form your first pleat, and just press along the edges, making sure they're nice and crisp. So using those pocket edges, kind of align them between each corner of your point, and just press them to form your first pleat of your pocket. So now we're going to form the second edge of our pocket. So we're going to pretty much do the same steps as before by using the corners of our pocket piece to kind of make those creases there. And you want to make sure you kind of line them up with the first edge of our pocket, making sure they're all even. And from there you kind of just press it and making those folded edges to create your second pleat in your pocket. And now what I think is the fun part, we want to edge stitch along our pocket folds from what we just created with the iron. We want to catch along the very edges of our fold, stitching around the perimeter of the pocket. If you have an edge stitch foot, you can put that on, or just use your presser foot, stitching along the very edge of your pocket. You don't want to skip this step because it's very important to help hold the shape of your pocket, and it gives it a nice clean finish. So now we're going to press in the remaining edges of our pocket, folding in our seam allowance, which is 1/2 inch, folding all the way around the edge of our pocket. This portion actually gets stitched onto the front of the vest, so we're just going to press that in. That way we can easily stitch that on later. Now let's pin our pocket in place. Move the rest of the pocket out the way and begin to stitch the pocket onto the front of the vest, stitching at the very edge as you did with the first 2 pleats. Last thing that you want to do is just fold back that first pleat and then bar tack down onto the second pleat, stitching down through all the layers.